Reversing narcissistic abuse. Reverse the devaluation programming. You have value simply because you exist. How long-term narcissistic abuse traps you in codependent addiction. All right, so we're going to be talking about that today. And before I get into that, let me tell you again the purpose of this channel. The purpose of this channel is to get you into taking direct action, which will result in your permanent healing from the devaluation abuse that you've encountered. So if you've been in a relationship with somebody who suffers from BPD or NPD, you are suffering from narcissistic devaluation syndrome. I don't know. Well, we can call it a syndrome. The bottom line is this, is that if you are one of those people, then what has happened is that you have been introduced to a programming that has created within you a situational narcissistic neurosis that will not go away. It will stay with you for the rest of your life. It's a self-perpetuating neurosis. So what is the difference between neurosis and psychosis? Psychosis is when somebody has a complete, total disconnection from reality. They are trapped in a delusion or a fantasy. And they do not know what reality is. If you tell them what reality is, they will deny it because they are trapped in a fantasy, in an illusion. They're walking around in their own bubble of illusion. They don't see reality. Psychosis. A psychotic break, right? So what is neurosis? Psychosis is you don't know what reality is. Neurosis is you know what reality is, but you don't like it. And you're desperately trying to convince yourself that reality is different from what you know it to be. You're trying to make yourself psychotic. So you're a failed psychotic. They say that borderlines are failed narcissists. You are a failed psychotic, but you're doing everything you can. You're trapped in a state of cognitive dissonance, and you bounce back. You have two completely opposite realities, and you're trying to fuse them together. She has borderline personality disorder, and she's abusive, but she loves me, so it's okay. You're stuck in that. Now, even if you're out of the relationship for decades, it doesn't matter. What happens is inside the relationship, because of the interrupted abuse cycle, I forget what that's called. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Where intermittent reinforcement. Go look it up. It's very important, because what psychologists don't realize is that intermittent reinforcement syndrome continues after the relationship is over. And so, in fact, if you've been abused and discarded, you're actually in the middle of the interruption cycle. So intermittent reinforcement is that the abuser love bombs you and taps into unresolved childhood connection needs. You conflate their love bombing with love, even though what's really happening is you are responding from a regressed infantile state. You bond to them with the strength that an infant bonds to a parent. They now have you. Once they've love bombed you and they have bonded with you, trauma bonding. Once they've created that bond, which is like super glue, then they're free to abuse you. So once they've got that, they abuse you. They abuse you in whatever way that is until the bond starts to break. And then in order to reinforce the trauma bond, they give you reinforcement. They make love to you. They give you a compliment. They hug you. They give you the intimacy that you desperately are craving. You go, oh my God, it's all okay now. It's over. They're going to love me. And you get bonded again. Once the bond is there, they continue the abuse. So it's intermittent reinforcement. They abuse you until you're about to lose the connection. Then they reinforce the bond. Then they abuse. So they're constantly going. It's a rubber band. They keep pulling. They don't pull it so far that it breaks, right? So that becomes an addiction. You get stuck in that. The trauma bond. You get stuck in that. You can't get out of it. You're in constant cognitive dissonance. You're in constant pain. You're constantly trying to survive what your nervous system is telling you is a life and death situation, them loving you, accepting you. It's codependence. You want to know the definition of codependence? That's codependence. It doesn't matter whether you're with somebody or alone. If you're a codependent and you're alone, you are in an interrupted phase. In fact, I can't have anybody around me. I can't deal with people. You're responding negatively to your overwhelming need to be loved and accepted. It's too painful to get close to people, so you push them away. But you're trapped in an intermittent reinforcement stage. And what's happened is that you have become you have situational personality disorder. You can become a situational borderline, a situational narcissist, become both. Situational means that it's not endemic. Borderlines and narcissists, they were trained that way since infants and or they're born with it, however you want to accept it. It's part of them that's not going away for the rest of their life. The best they can do is learn how to act contrary and to learn how to act, suppress their symptoms and act contrary to that, and they can recover and have relationships, but their internal programming doesn't go away. It's programmed, it's wired, it's hardwired into them. Situational means that it's not hardwired, but it acts as though it is, and it won't go away, and you will stay a situational narcissist or a situational borderline for the rest of your life. And the damage is lethal. It can destroy you. It can kill you. So the whole point of this channel is to give you the tools so that you can permanently heal. And that is very simple. I've made it very clear. I've written it in my book. I say it in almost every video. The only cure for your situational narcissism, your situational codependent, interrupted syndrome, whatever. The only cure is to work all 12 steps with a sponsor and then sponsor somebody else. That is a guaranteed cure. So if you're watching my channel and you don't follow that suggestion, you're wasting your time. This channel will not help you. Doesn't matter how brilliant my analysis is. It won't help you. The only point of that analysis is to wake you up enough and to inspire you to realize, oh my God, she's never going to love me. He's never going to love me the way that I want. They can't help but hurt me. I won't be able to fix them. It's impossible. And two, I'm going to take action and work those 12 steps and heal. If I don't accomplish that, I have failed in my task. So let me appeal to your codependence. If you want to fix me, follow my instructions to the letter. That means you work all 12 steps with a sponsor, not by yourself looking at the wall or reading it in the literature and then telling yourself you worked the fourth step because I'm self-examining. No, you work all 12 steps with a sponsor and then you sponsor somebody else. And you work steps 4 through 7 repeatedly on your destructive relationship until you are free of resentment, free of pain. Then you can say that you have cured yourself of your situational narcissism. Until then, guess what? I'm going to know immediately. If you leave a comment, I'm going to know immediately whether you've followed my suggestions. And it doesn't mean that I'm psychic. Anybody who's done what I've done can immediately tell whether or not you're in a state of healing or whether you are in the interrupted phase of intermittent reinforcement, because that's all that happens. The intermittent reinforcement cycle is going on. Your borderline or your narcissist discards you. And it's not like, okay, the abuse is over, I'm going to heal. Time will heal all. Nope. You are in an interrupted phase, which is the addicted, codependent, I need to get them to love me phase. And that will stay with you for the rest of your life, no matter what you tell yourself. Go into denial all you want. It won't change anything. All that's going to happen. See, I can tell where somebody is along the spectrum of that. Because if in their experience, because actual time is irrelevant. If in their experience the discard was recent, they will be in denial and they will say, I just love them. I just want them to be happy. And if only I could just let them know. That's their experience, is that the discard just happened and there's still hope that they'll come back and they can fix it. If, however, their experience is that the discard has convinced them that they will never get them back, they will never come back for them, then they become furious and angry. And they talk about how horrible, and they'll go on complaining about, they love when I tell you, how the borderline thinks and they can't love you, they're incapable of loving you, they're damaged. They love when I talk like that, because then they'll, yes, and you know what they did to me, and they're always like this, and they're worthless, and they're horrible. I can tell by those comments that you are in the interrupted phase, but you realize that they're never coming back, or you're acting as though they're never coming back. So I can tell. And so we're going to get into that. I'm going to read a comment from somebody who's been on my channel for at least 4 years. And the takeaway from it is that they have not followed my advice. And I'm going to prove it. All right. So where is it? Okay, so this is in response to my video where, by the way, I just have to let you know, the video where I said that my borderline hoovered me, and I talked about that, and then I made a couple other videos because people got mad at me because they said I was being hypocritical because I hammered it into you. I put a gun to your forehead and I told you that you have to go no contact. And so because I said that, and because I read the email and gave her a video response, they're furious at me. Well, the difference between me and you is that I've worked all 12 steps, and I've worked steps 4 through 7 repeatedly. I am bulletproof. You want to be bulletproof? That's how. And just to let you know what happened. Yep, I read the email. I was shocked. I was shocked at how sociopathic and how narcissistic she was. And it was even just a big revelation to see how that she was even more narcissistic than I remembered. And I was actually very happy to hear that I'm right, that, man, there was no way this woman could have ever loved me. It was all a fantasy. She's as narcissistic as they come. She's bad news. And I'm so lucky I got out of that. But the weirdest part is I thought I was in love. I wasn't in love, neither was she. It was all projection and fantasy, the whole thing. And she was incredibly narcissistic and abusive. And all of my feelings that, I tried to guilt myself out of. She can't help it. She's been damaged. No, as true as all that is, she was incredibly sociopathic and abusive and didn't see me, treated me like an object. And here she was coming back with no awareness at all, wanting to objectify me and use me. So that was an interesting experience. But I then, after I thought about it, and I became aware that I have no reaction to her. And so I have an opportunity. I'm going to respond to her, and I'm going to suggest that she get help. And I did. And I didn't interact with her personally. I sent her a video, which is not personal interaction. And I'm going to share with you again that I validated her and then lovingly gave her advice on what to do. Just to let you know, as soon as that was over, she tried to email me, and for whatever reason, the email didn't go through. And then she left a comment on the video asking if she could please communicate with me, that she was very touched by it, and can we please talk? My response to her was, thank you for the invitation, but under the current circumstances, I would not feel comfortable with a personal connection. And then I proceeded to block her on all of the ways that I knew, so that if she tried to respond, she wouldn't get to me. So the truth is I didn't break my no contact rule. Yes, it's true that early on, when I first went no contact, I had a codependent lapse, and I remember unblocking her, and then I forgot about it conveniently. And those of you who want to get on my case, that was right afterwards. That was like a week afterwards. That was 5 years ago. That was before I worked the steps on her. And you're making my point for me. I was codependent. So codependent that I unblocked her and then convinced myself that I had blocked her. So I'm revealing to you what codependence is. The most important part is I worked the steps. I worked all 12 steps. And then she did hoover me back 5 years later, and it had no effect on me. It gave me the ability to tell her lovingly to go get in therapy and that I can't have anything to do with you. I didn't attack her. I didn't interact with her. I didn't talk to her. It was the most loving, healthy, kind thing I could do. And I had no agenda. And it's because I worked the steps. If you want what I have, you got to do what I do. And those of you that want to climb up my rear end and tell me whatever it was, I already know. First 2 words out of your mouth, I already know you haven't followed my suggestions. So if you ever want to, self-righteously give me advice, you're going to have to convince me that you've done what I've done. Until then, you have no idea. Anyway, let's continue. So here's a quote from that interchange of me sharing the videos about how I responded to my ex-borderline girlfriend trying to hoover me. So this person says, no problem, just validate her, all caps. She must have gone through much worse mental trauma than you, probably 20 times more. Be the bigger man. She is emotional and underdeveloped, as you teach us. I asked this exact question from you 4 years ago. What do I say when she comes back? But we never dated. Now you are in this predicament. You can love her just like you love your parents, friends, pets, but you can choose not to be in love. Your love is an action, right? What action is ignorance? She probably doesn't want to date you again. She just wants to know you don't hate her. So what's amazing to me about this is that this person heard nothing of what I said. Nothing. They heard or saw in the title, my borderline ex tried to hoover me. It then pulled him into his self-referential narcissistic bubble of his unresolved issues. I can tell you haven't worked the steps. So you're on my channel, according to you, for at least 4 years. And in those 4 years, you haven't followed my suggestions. You're wasting your time. It's an absolute waste of your time. As brilliant as I am, and I am, I'm brilliant. I'm very insightful. I have very incisive awareness, and I can psychoanalyze anybody. As brilliant as I am, watching my channel does nothing for you if you don't follow my suggestion. And I know you haven't. You've stayed here at least 4 years and you haven't followed my suggestion. So he says, no problem, just validate her. How do you know I didn't? Now, my validation isn't, my intention behind my validation is different from yours. My validation of her, which is what I did. Now, you guys haven't seen the video. I'm not going to show it to you because it's personal. But in the first half of the video, I was very emotional. And I spent the first half of that video telling her the truth about herself. How amazingly wonderful she is. And all the beautiful things, because underneath everybody is a beautiful soul. And borderlines actually reveal that beauty. You know, narcissists, maybe they don't as much. But borderlines reveal that beauty. It doesn't change anything. They're still little infants with zero impulse control, and they're incredibly selfish and narcissistic. But it doesn't mean that they aren't incredibly beautiful. And you know, you can't help but fall in love with them because, you know, their innocence and beauty is undeniable. It's not mature. They're not a mature person choosing to reveal that in a healthy way. They're infants. And we have an inborn genetic programming to have an overwhelming parental need to take care of the infant. We, if we're codependents, we confuse that. We conflate that with love, and it's not love. We also conflate that with our codependence. In fact, they fuel each other. So my validation came from a healthy, mature place. I had no agenda. I didn't want to know what her response was. I half expected her to have a negative response. But even if she had a positive response, I had no intention of giving, you know, of creating a bond. That wasn't going to happen. You right here just validate her in all caps. It is so important to you that you have to put it in all caps. This is your codependence. But what's most important about this, it's everything I just said is true about the conflation of the need to parentify and blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff is true. And just the need to be loving and kind, all of that is true. But it's also your projection. What you want more than anything else is to be validated. And that is why you seek to validate your abuser. Because what you want, because it's such an overwhelming feeling for you, if you were to feel how deeply you need to be loved and validated, it might overwhelm you. So you project it. It is a self-preservation technique, it's narcissistic, and it is abusive. Like, what? How is that abusive? Because what you're doing, you know, it's just like, you know, when you make love, you often show people with your behavior, you know, what you want the other person to do for you. You show them how fast, how intense. You know, it comes from your desire, and people respond to that. And it becomes this dance, people responding to each other's communication. So when you're codependently seeking to validate your abuser who is not in a state of recovery, who is not able to interact with you emotionally, maturely, and who also becomes addicted to you, and you allow that addiction to happen, your need to validate them, the overwhelming need, because I can see it in there, just validate her. You have this overwhelming need to validate her. It's your projection. You're showing her what you desperately want her to do for you. And you're unconscious. Your conscious intention is, I am the good angel flying, validating the poor broken child. You're the poor broken child. You want the validation from your parents you never got. You think she's going to give it to you. So you project it onto her unconsciously, hoping that that's what you're going to get. It's selfish. And it's abusive. Now, listen to this delusion. You are terribly trapped in the intermittent reinforcement addiction of codependence. And the delusion is phenomenal. Listen to this. You say, she must have gone through much worse mental trauma than you. How do you know that? How can you possibly know that? What, because now I'm in a state of recovery? Because now I can function and I'm individuated? Well, it's true that right now I'm not going through worse mental trauma. But the truth of the matter is that the aftermath of her abuse was almost lethal to me. I almost deleted myself. It was the most horrific pain I'd ever gone through. And it's not a competition. A competition, that's what children do. So you're showing us your emotional development. You're at a child's level, and it has to be a competition. And so you tell this to yourself for multiple reasons. Your conscious reason is that you are making yourself superior. So it's very condescending to say 20 times. She has been traumatized 20 times worse than I have. It's literally impossible, but it's just not accurate. And you can't possibly know what I went through as a kid. You can't possibly know. But just to give you an example, my brother was a narcissist, ended up homeless in his 60s, and is probably dead. My sister ended up physically creating an illness from her codependence and dying from it. My father was an alcoholic who drank himself to death. My mother was severely codependent and had borderline tendencies. So if you're going to tell me that I lived through that childhood and I wasn't severely damaged, and I was 20 times less damaged than her, again, you can't possibly know what I've been through. But how incredibly abusive, how incredibly narcissistic, how incredibly condescending it is of you to make that conclusion without knowing anything about me. This is your projection. This is what you tell yourself. This is how you give yourself the ability to validate your abuser who can never love you. This is your projection. You keep going. Be the bigger man. How condescending of you. How much bigger could I have been? And then you go on to justify her abuse. She is emotional, underdeveloped, as you teach us. Now you're appealing to my ego. Condescendingly. Trying to manipulate me by appealing to my ego. And if I'm your teacher, why don't you listen to what I teach you? If you just called me your teacher, why haven't you followed my suggestions? Obviously you don't see me as a teacher, because if you did, you'd follow my suggestions, and you haven't done that. So you're as emotional and underdeveloped as you teach us. I asked this question from you 4 years ago. For 4 years you've been on this channel and you haven't bothered to follow my instructions. What a colossal waste of your time. I asked this question from you 4 years ago. What do I say when she comes back, but we never dated? If you never dated, why do you care? Now I know that you're in love with her. I don't know if you were sexual with her or not. Because a lot of people are just friends, because the borderline says we're just friends, and yet they do the exact same thing that people do in romantic relationships. They love bomb you. They seek to get your intimate love and affection. They reveal their problems. You take care of them, but intellectually you're just friends, even though you're bumping uglies and you're staying over. And you just, basically she just said, I'm gonna dump you and there's nothing you can do about it. But stay with me and fall in love with me and take care of me. And you wanna call that we never dated. Now maybe you never did date. That's even more codependent. If there was no physical romantic interaction, but you waited, and you never dated, but you were there for her. You were in the friend zone, and you're proud of this. That is horrifically codependent. It's very sad. If you never dated and she comes back, so if you never dated, what do you mean? You're acting like she left you and discarded you. That happens in a relationship. So you obviously wanted one. It meant that to you, even though technically you never dated. And you're wondering, what am I going to say when she comes back? What do you mean comes back? Listen, if I have somebody who's just a friend, really just an acquaintance, and we bump into each other and we hang out and I like that, and that person disappears, I don't spend time thinking, what am I going to say when they come back? They come back and go, oh, hey, it's you. How are you? That's what you say. If what you're saying is true, that you're just friends and you never dated and it's not that big of a deal and they disappeared, what do I say when they come back? Hi? Because that's not what was going on. You're saying this to appease her because that's what she told you. My friend, you're chronically codependent. Chronically unhealed codependent. Go work the steps. ppgrecoveredcodependence.org. Coda, CODA.org. Adultchildren.org. Work the steps with a sponsor. Work steps 4 through 7 after you've gone through all 12. Go back and do steps 4 through 7 repeatedly. Work an inventory on what to say when she comes back. Sponsor somebody else. Then you'll wake up from this incredibly self-referential, narcissistic, delusionary bubble that you're in. You've been holding on to this for 4 years. You remember that you asked me this 4 years ago. That's not normal. You need help. You are trapped in a situational personality disorder. And now you're going to project onto me. You say, now you are in this predicament. I'm not in a predicament. I was never in a predicament. My borderline ex, after 4 years, contacted me and tried to hoover me. I went, whoa, holy crap. I had an awareness and I was brought back to it, for a few hours, went to sleep, woke up and went, wow, I am really healed from this. I sent her a video. I told her nice things and I told her to get healthy. I told her to go get some counseling. I then said, I can't have anything to do with you. I wish you all the best. That is not a predicament. It's a predicament for you. You have somebody who you didn't date, who according to you was just a friend, just an acquaintance, who has disappeared, and you can't figure out how to talk to somebody that's, if they come back. You don't know how to say, hey, how have you been? You don't know what to say. I'm not in that predicament. That's your predicament. You say, you can love her just like you love your parents, friends, pets, but you can choose not to be in love. Now, this is your delusion. You're still in love. You were in love then, even though she told you were just friends. You're still in love, even though she's discarded you and moved on and she hasn't talked to you in at least 4 years, according to you. And your fantasy is that you can choose not to be in love. But like a pet, you're going to take her in. It's interesting that you put pets in there. Parents, friends, pets. Pets need you. Pets are like infants. They love you because they need you. They're wonderful. I love pets. They're great. They love you unconditionally. But that's interesting you put her in there. Again, this is your projection, your fantasy, your delusion. And you tell yourself that you can choose not to be in love, which means that you can choose to not be out of control. Because that's what in love means. Being in love means you're not in control. but you can choose to love and be in control, but you don't have any control. How do I know that? Because according to you, a friend that you weren't dating has gone somewhere, and you don't know how to say, hey, how are you? How have you been? That's too difficult for you. It's too fraught with intensity and love and not being in love. I mean, that's as out of control as you can get. You need help. Go work the steps. You say your love is an action, right? What action is ignorance? I don't know what that means. She probably doesn't want to date you again. She just wants to know that you don't hate her. This is your projection. And this is about you. What you want to know is that she doesn't hate you. She represents your mother. You want to know your mother doesn't hate you. I don't care what your relationship with your mom is. Don't write back and say, I've got a great relationship with my mom. It's it's unconsciously representative of you. She represents your unconscious mother, and you want her to love you. And you tell yourself that if she comes back, all she wants to know is you don't hate her. If she has discarded you for at least 4 years, I can promise you the first thing that's going on in her mind is not whether or not you hate her. She has forgotten about you. She doesn't even know you exist. You're not her boyfriend, according to you. You're just friends, and she's disappeared and isn't in communication with you. So I promise you, she's not worried about whether or not you hate her. She could care less. If you come back into her mind, it'll be because she wants something from you. She's not going to be thinking, I hope he doesn't hate me. She's going to be thinking, I think I can get what I want from this guy. My borderline ex, she wanted me to come save her. So dating wasn't on the menu because borderlines don't date like normal people. Borderlines have people that they consume. They have people that they use. They have supply. They have people that do things for them. When she tried to hoover me back, she said, I'm in an abusive relationship with my boyfriend who suddenly out of nowhere became abusive, and I need help. I need strong men to come and get me. You're a strong man. Come and get me. She's not even caring what I think about her. In fact, she doesn't care if I'm mad at her. She just wants me to come and get her. She knows, in her mind, she knows she can manipulate me. She's already doing it. You're a strong man. She's saying, I want you to regulate my feelings. I want your strength to surround me so that I will be emotionally regulated. And I want you to come and get me. She also said, you will never hurt me. In other words, I know that you'll do what I want and you won't get mad at me. But that has nothing to do with her worrying if I hate her or not. This is your projection. She just wants to know that you don't hate her. So here's your projection. You want to be validated, and you want her to validate you. You want to be in a position where you can be superior, self-righteous, and filled with loving parental compassion. And you want to be the bigger man. And you want to tell yourself that this is just the reason why you go on about she's more damaged than you, she's been probably 20 times more damaged. That's what you tell yourself because it gives you a feeling of control. Because you think if she's been that damaged, then once you validate her, she will be bonded to you and she'll never leave you. You think that it gives you control. And simultaneously, that's what you want. You want somebody to see how badly you've been damaged and to love you and to see your pain and to heal it. These are all your projections. So the bottom line is you're no different than anybody else. How do I know all this about you? Because I've been there. I know exactly what you're thinking and feeling because I was there. So it's not because I'm psychic. It's because I've been there. It takes one to know one. And I can tell that you haven't worked the steps because that's where I was before I worked the steps. So my friend, get some help. And anybody else watching this channel, if you're a borderline and you're watching this channel isn't meant for you. If you leave a comment anything other than it must have been very painful what you've gone through, then you're making it about yourself and you're not acknowledging that the horrific pain that these people have experienced, and it shows you don't understand the damage that BPD can cause. So that's if you're a borderline. If you're borderline, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told my borderline ex. Go get DBT therapy, get regular DBT therapy, get into a DBT group, therapy group, and do the daily DBT workbook exercises. If you do that because you want to get healed, you can probably have a relationship. That's the best advice I can give you. You can heal and you can recover. If you're not a borderline and you're watching this, the only point of all this is to help you understand you're not going to get what you want. They can't give you what you want. And you are situationally neurotic, and that you are suffering from a situational personal personality disorder. You're situationally insane. And it'll kill you if you don't get help. And the only way it's going to work is if you do what I suggest. Therapy is good after you've worked the steps. Until then, it's kind of a waste of your time. But it is. Anything other than working the steps is a waste of your time. So that's my message to you. Take it, like it, don't like it. I don't care. I've done my part. Now you can do whatever the heck you want with it. I wish you all the best. I have nothing but love and a complete acceptance and empathy for all of you. That's why I tell you the truth, because I don't need you to like me. I'll tell you the truth no matter how it makes you feel. That's what I would want. All right, so having said that, I invite you all to my other channel, the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel. We have that's not that one. We have live guided interdimensional meditations. We do it every Wednesday and Saturday at 8:30 p.m. We're doing one today. Feel free to show up. They've been incredibly healing for a lot of people. Borderline, codependent, whoever the heck you are, average person, show up. The earth is going through a massive change, and there's healing on the horizon for people who choose it. So I encourage you to choose it. Feel free to come check it out. That's it. I wish you all the best. Go work the steps. Then you can stop watching this channel and go live your life. Take very good care of yourselves.